Hello, my loves. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Naomi Mraz, and in today's video, my love, I decided to take a different approach towards something more raw and vulnerable. And what I want to be talking about is the inner child healing. What is the inner child, my personal experiences, and how I have been able to uproot from them, reground, and really allow myself to understand, get curious, and show up in the world as a less triggered or healed version of myself, if you will. And the reason I do air quotes is just because I know this might be a little bit of a different approach compared to my other past, the more aesthetic and beautiful romanticized films. And although I love that, and I think there's space for that, I also really want to open this portal and this opportunity for me to talk about things that are more, real. And there is always going to be moments when there is for light and the dark, and I really do emphasize that we honor both sides, the good and the bad, the healed, the unhealed. And so really, for me, the inner child is simply a past version or younger version of ourselves. I do believe that inner child healing does stem from a place of our childhood, when we were from the ages of about maybe 4, 5 to like 10, 12 into early preteen years. And also, it's not only for healing the inner child. I also believe that we should take space to heal any past version of ourselves, whether it's yesterday or years ago when you were an infant. There are constantly going to be things and experiences in our life that trigger us, that shape our neural pathways to react and even have a sense of conditioned perspectives to the world. And so my aim and my intention is to help you understand certain ways that have helped me to unpack these different sources of trauma, and also to really understand that there is always an opportunity for us to continuously go back to these places with love and forgiveness and curiosity. Before I begin, I just want to say a disclaimer. I am not a licensed therapist, psychiatrist, psychologist, or any professional by any means. I'm simply going to be sharing with you some practices and what I've learned and what has helped me throughout the past years of my life, and coming from traumatic experiences from my childhood. Of course, I want to honor there was beautiful moments in my childhood. I was never lacking of food or basic survival needs. It was more so domestic abuse, emotional, spiritual, and really just physical in some ways as well. So the first way, my loves, that I really feel is important for us to reconnect and to go back to those places in our childhood or young adulthood is to journal. Journaling has been one of the most transformative practices that I've been able to integrate into my life, whether it's on a weekly or daily basis. And really, this is just an opportunity for me to be able to reflect, understand my triggers, question where all of this uncomfortableness or pain or suffering is stemming from, and providing just an open platform for me to fully express creatively and expressively how I experienced things as a child, validating myself, my experience, and unpacking the different wounds I may have developed throughout the years. because of a circumstance or a parent wound, codependence, sexual abuse, or even just simply not being loved or supported in the ways that you may have needed as a child or teenager or past version of yourself. So truly just being able to break down those family dynamics, your different emotional responses to the world, and just mind dumping it all into paper and being able to process and give yourself grace and love and forgiveness for every single experience, and knowing that you aren't at fault or conditioned entirely by your experience, but you have an opportunity to show up and simply understand that, hey, although these experiences may have happened, how can I show up more and more loving and unconditional towards myself and others, and understanding that everyone has baggage and wounds that they are trying to heal from as well. So journaling, definitely, if you feel that that is something that you feel called to. All right, my loves, the second tip I really encourage you to potentially go after is therapy. I truly believe that therapy can be extremely transformative practice if you are with the right person, you feel comfortable, you feel called to share these experiences, and being able to hear another person's perspective and the way that you could potentially take different pathways to either speak to a relative about something that has happened to you, opening up about traumatic experiences you may have never even confronted to yourself, feeling fully and allowing yourself to have that anchor and someone that is a professional, that has empathy, that is loving, and that is really going to help you regroup and understand that you are not this, completely flawed or imperfect human being, and that you'll never be able to, show up in the world the way that others may. And so really allowing yourself to show up vulnerably with someone else can help you to fall back in love with yourself and understand different practices you can use, and even helping to construct healthy and sustainable boundaries for your future, for future relationships, family dynamics, friendships. I can't express enough how much therapy has helped me, especially as a younger teenager, going through, sexual abuse, going through losing my closest brother, my sibling, and simply processing through, traumatic experiences with my parents and my siblings. It all felt very validating and allowed me to understand that I am not just this fucked up person and I'll never be able to fully move on from those experiences, but that I am a human that has had, hardships, and that doesn't make me bad, that doesn't make me wrong. It doesn't mean that I can never move from that place, but instead I can show up more lovingly, more open, and allow others to show up as well. When you start to understand and validate yourself, then you won't gaslight yourself or others, and you'll understand that, hey, we're all kind of going through things, so why not be more loving and kind and open-minded to all kinds of experiences throughout life. So that is definitely something that I highly encourage you guys if you are open to something like that. Third thing, my love, is movement. Some sort of embodiment, somatic practice, even breath work, and releasing the trauma in your mind, body, and spirit in some form of physical activity has been so extremely healing in my own journey. Almost every single day, virtually every day, I practice some sort of movement, whether that is yoga, some sort of dance, or running, or even working out. There is definitely some really important studies out there that need to be done about the connection between the mind and the body. So when we allow ourselves to really just move and breathe, release, and have the mindfulness to connect with our body and all of those stored stagnant energy centers that may have been built up over time, which a lot of times cause dis-ease and illness, disalignments. And so for me, I think that it's extremely important to be able to have that safe relationship and connection with your body, because I have had very traumatic experiences when it comes to my physical body and being molested as a child, and even being, sexually abused growing up as well. And even just experiences where I was, neglected physically or emotionally. A lot of times our mind cannot handle the different experiences that we're going through, and it tends to suppress it. It suppresses it and we hide it, and a lot of times that projects onto the body and can cause disalignment, disease, and even, pain. So it has been quite a journey to be able to regroup and remind myself and move that stagnance and say, hey, it is safe to be in my body. This is a loving temple and anchor for me to show up. And when I feel those uncomfortable feelings and sense of anger or disgust or pain, I simply embrace that. I feel through it, I breathe through it, and I anchor into this present moment. And simply just doing things like ecstatic dance or, womb healing or, Tai Chi, whatever you feel called to, can be so extremely powerful in reconnecting with yourself and empowering yourself to say, hey, this is my vessel and I'm allowed to feel completely safe and loving and grounded within my mind, body, and spirit. And so by taking initiative every day, daily action, and maybe even weekly, and simply showing up vulnerably for yourself can be just something that you wouldn't have thought was as powerful or as dynamic. But at the end of the day, I really encourage you to give this a try and maybe start slow, whatever feels called for you. I really encourage you to listen to your own intuition and just go with the movement, the flow of your own bodily curiosity, if that makes sense. The next thing, my loves, I really encourage you to do to reconnect with that inner child or your past versions of self is some form of playfulness. And when I say this, it could be so vast and so wide, but really being able to allow yourself to be imaginative, silly, playful, careless, and maybe even playing games that you loved to play when you were a kid. I personally love to play things like hide and seek, tagged. I played board games like Monopoly or Candyland or Trouble, and maybe even video games, anything that you really loved or hobbies that you adored as a younger version of yourself can allow you to tap back into those unknown places or feelings that you haven't felt in a long time. And when I say this, I mean it in such an open way. And it could be from you feeling a sense of just awe for life again, or having like a tickle fight with your family, or you're like with your partner, or even just going out in your garden and being curious, looking at the different plants, the animals, the sky, and allow yourself to daydream. When you take yourself back to those moments, it could be such a provoking feeling, because a lot of times in our day-to-day life, we're constantly being productive. We're in our logical mind, working, trying to get things done, or just in a stagnant state of being. But when you pretend like you're just this innocent young version of yourself and you're running outside barefoot, playing, dancing, not giving a fuck what anyone thinks or looks at you, going to a park even, and just exploring how it felt as a younger child, and going back to yourself, forgiving yourself, loving that younger version of you, and saying, hey, everything is okay now. You are safe. You are loved. You are so valid. And it's okay to be so fully you. So that is something that I have really, really loved to tap into. Even things like art or listening to music that I loved as a child or a teen really just brings me this sense of light, and like I'm rediscovering that sense of innocence for myself. And it might feel really uncomfortable or silly or cringe in the beginning, but starting small even, and doing little things with your siblings if you have any, or friends and family, can even be like this group bond healing. The next thing, my loves, that I really highly encourage you, which you probably had expected, is meditation. Meditation has been something that I have been practicing for years now. And although very highly promoted and pushed out by so many people, with studies about the brain and the body and all of these things, I also truly believe that it could be as simple as you just being present with your thoughts and your triggers, your traumatic episodes that may come up, and simply holding space for that moment, observing, and no longer attaching narratives or guilt and shame. But if those feelings do arise, you just embrace it. You hold space for yourself and say, hey, it's okay for me to feel these icky feelings in my body, in my mind, and my spirit potentially. And how can I move from here? How could I transform this? And the way I really like to do this is I will turn on some guided meditation for inner child healing. And they're very vast, but I feel that this is such a safe place for me to be guided to potentially a memory that was very triggering for me as a child, or even potentially going to this oasis and revisiting my younger self, what she looked like, what she talked like, how she walked, how she played. And it's like this movie moment where you are meeting your younger self in your mind, and you just hug her or him or them or whatever. You just embrace your younger self and say, hey, I love you. You are okay. You are safe. It is so fully righteous for you to just be here now. You no longer have to show up in this state of fear or limiting beliefs or even shame. And I'm getting emotional just thinking about this, but I will link some videos down below, but I really highly encourage you to potentially take this on. It can be very triggering, I'm not gonna lie, so please prepare yourself. If this isn't something that you feel you're ready for, highly encourage you to take baby steps. These are all suggestions for you to take and integrate what your spirit is calling you for. So even, meditating, visualizing your younger self and, hugging her, embracing her, taking her from an uncomfortable situation or an experience and rewriting or reprogramming those potentially very heavy moments that you had to go through, and letting them know that it's not their fault, and that it's okay now, and that everything will be okay because you are here, you are safe, you exist. And all is well that ends well. So I really highly encourage you, if you feel called to dive into some deeply meditative states and revisit those past versions of yourself. The next thing, my loves, that I find is really transformative in my own inner child healing is gaining some sort of memory item. And I know this kind of sounds broad, but basically what I mean is getting some sort of item from when you were a younger version of yourself, whatever age that is that you wanting to work on. And so for me, I have items like journals that I wrote when I was a child, pictures of me when I was like 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and framing them in my room or my bathroom as reminders to be kinder, more loving to myself. Maybe even like a bracelet that you owned, or clothing, or anything that you feel you have some sort of connection to your younger self can really serve as almost like this meditative, empathetic source of item that takes you back, and maybe even simply having that reminder to you throughout your day to be softer, more forgiving, and to understand that you were treating yourself like the younger version of yourself, and different reminders and ways that you could integrate and show up for. So yeah, maybe even you want to take a moment to hold the item or a picture of yourself, just closing your eyes, meditating, holding it near your heart, or even just taking yourself back to a memory that you had, whether good or bad or neutral, can be such a flourishing state of embodiment and just mindfulness, because you're no longer in that present moment, but you're going back and revisiting those moments, and you are no longer hopefully judging yourself for them. And if you do, simply just be in that feeling. Be like, wow, these senses and emotions of judgment or fear or shame or guilt are coming up, and this is no longer a form or a sense of growth for me. How could I move from here? How could I show up more lovingly or more compassionate? How can I nourish my body, my mind, my environment, so that I can show up more kind, more loving, more empathetic towards myself and others? Because at the end of the day, we're all these children roaming the earth, pretending to be these adults, and growing up and having to assimilate to these boxes or, specific pathways that people want us to take or behave, become. But that is completely your responsibility, your own creative outlet to show up in the world, and allowing that inner child to pour through so that other children also feel safe in this world, and for just generational healing, really, at the end of the day. So this is definitely something that I have found has really grounded me and allowed me to remember those potentially provoking moments from my past. Lastly, my loves, but not least, one of the most really regrouping and self-affirming moments and practices that I've integrated are words of affirmations or positive self-talk. And these practices have really allowed me to, again, recondition these limiting beliefs and programs I have in my mind about my past, really integrating some form of repetition, like I'm safe, I'm loved, I am okay now. Whenever we have a limiting belief, being able to replace it with something more loving, more open, more freeing for ourselves is where the true, reprogramming takes place. It's unlearning those mental stagnancies and forms of neglect or even coping mechanisms we've created throughout the years, and replacing it with something more loving, more open, and more honest, really. For example, if you have a thought that's coming up like, oh, as a child, I was so annoying, that's why I was unloved, or I had no friends, or why my parents didn't care for me. But instead of that, or in place of that, saying, as a child, I was unique, I was different, I was misunderstood, and therefore I had a bit more difficult time connecting with others until I was able to reconnect with myself. And I was loved and held in the ways that people were able to show up for themselves, you know? Some form of reality check that takes you from a place of ego or victimhood or self-shame, and instead affirming it with reality, with what is true, and with something more compassionate. Because as either a child, infant, or teenager, of course, we're more oblivious, we're more ignorant, and susceptible to the emotional triggers of adults or our friends and family. Then a lot of times these heavy emotions can feel very much like a personal attack, or like it's our fault, or that we are inherently wrong or flawed in some way, when in reality, the people in our surroundings are only showing up in the ways where they have learned and what they have healed. And although I do believe that the reality that we live in is some form of projection of our own mental psyche and our awareness, I do also coexistingly believe that, especially as younger versions of ourselves or children, we are very vulnerable because we believe that everyone is good and right, and that our parents are perfect, and that, you know, our grandparents or aunties or older peers are always better, right, than us, or, you know, smarter than us. So then when there's personal attacks or triggers or moments when you felt abandoned or neglected, a lot of times we inherently take those in, and it becomes a form of self-sabotage, or, you know, like I said, negative coping mechanisms that we try to make sense of. And so again, I really highly encourage you to just feed yourself those positive affirmations like, I am worthy, I am abundant, I am allowed to be imaginative, to explore. I am no longer in a state of, you know, you could be like, my childhood was both good and bad. I choose to fully embrace and love every single version of myself. I am safe now. I am loved. I am allowed to show up in this world. I am free, I am abundant. Whatever you want to integrate here, I'll maybe put some more here on the screen because I'm kind of having brain fart right now. But I just really love to pour myself with all those positive affirmations. Anytime limiting beliefs pour in, I'd really try to give myself a reality check and say, hey, I'm good, I'm safe, I'm healed in certain ways, and it's okay for me to feel joy and peace now, while still continuously on this voyage of healing and reconditioning and self-compassion for myself and others. So that is the end of this video, love. I feel like I've been talking for a very long time. I'm sure there are a few things I missed here and there, but hopefully you are able to take at least something away from this video. I thank you so much for showing up today and really being curious or wanting to do any form of self-healing. I really encourage you and just want to give you that sense of thankfulness, because it is all our responsibility and we all choose to take accountability and evolve in this lifetime. So thank you so much, my loves, and I will see you all in a video next time, hopefully. Bye.